I'll call the June 6th Finance Committee meeting to order. Welcome, everybody. Let's begin with the roll call. Start with the same.
Present.
You all can
Charles
go around.
Williams, present.
Zachary Epps, present.
Jennifer Loman, present. Leah Mulhern, present.
Pam Henry, present.
And Dan Schultz, that's me, present. I need a motion to approve the minutes. So, Mr. Epps and Ms. Haywood second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, Mr. Swigert, floor is yours. Again.
Excellent. So if you've taken an advanced peek at the meeting, you can see there's a lot of slides. So it is going to be a long meeting because I'm going to read every single one. No, there should be, a lot of the slides are repeats and some of them are just housekeeping items. So we'll get through them pretty quickly. And some of them are repeats because it's the same, virtually the same information that we talked about last week with the preliminary budget. All right, so first, when we talk about our interim financial statements, we always look at our balance sheet and we always look at how to see how our cash is doing. Again, very strong number, an 8.7 million increase from the prior year. That shows we're more than likely headed towards surplus for this year. You can see when you look at our total revenue down here on the bottom, 122 million versus 115 million. Our revenues are growing faster than our expenditures, which is always a good sign. 6.7 versus only a $2.5 million growth in expenditures. All good indicators. When we look at our May 31st, 2023 versus our May 31st, 2022 financials, the items of note are our local source revenue is $2.7 million higher than the prior year. Again, we talked about this every month. This interest this month, we can say it's also our income tax. We had a very good collection last month. We collected almost 20% of our income tax last month. So by good, I mean a solid collection percentage. So we did see $2.7 million growth in local sources. Transfer taxes are beginning to slow down. We collected the lowest amount for this month than we collected the entire year. So that's an indicator to keep an eye on going forward. On the state side, I thought this interesting. We did collect 16.8 million versus 14.6 million last year. But if you recall, we have the homestead money, which was a shift of taxing burden from taxpayers to the state. They provided $600,000 more of homestead support through the Homestead Act. It was put in place back in 2006. And I thought also interesting is we've collected $16 million to date on a total budget of almost 26 million. So we're already 91% of the way through the school year, but we've only collected 65% of the state revenue. So when we talk about the state and state funding, just because the state promises us money, it doesn't mean we always get it in a timely manner. So we'll be closing out the school year. We'll probably have millions of dollars in receivables. On the expenditure side, we still have this split of charter school between regular and special programs. You can see we have $800,000 less in regular program expenditures, which is really just because we recorded all of our charter school expenses in regular ed, and they made a journal entry at the end of the year to push them into special ed. This year, we've been doing a good job, been doing a better job tracking them, putting them in the appropriate buckets. On the pupil services side, you'll see an increase of 564,000. Which seems like a high number, but that is because we got the grant money for counselors for social and emotional supports in the classrooms. So we have a couple Lakeside counselors serving through that budget line item, as well as here with ESSER, with professional development through UPenn. So not a whole lot of a story in really any other category. In operations, we talked about this before, the parking lot repairs, the boiler repairs that funds that. So when we look at our revenue expenditures on a monthly basis through this chart, it would appear as if expenditures are headed for a very good trajectory and not going to meet budget, but we still have to pay out our teachers summer pay, which is a lump sum pay at the beginning of the summer, which is multiple paychecks at the same time. So this graph is going to have more of this type of trajectory than a level off. And we're doing very well on the revenue side. And safe to say, when looking at the year-end projection, that we're going to exceed that revenue target by a good bit, by $4.5 million. And again, interest income, strong collections, earned income tax, strong collections on transfer taxes, even though they are decreasing, they started out in a very good place. So we have a next to historic collection, not 1.9 million, 1 million, but that's still better than the 800,000 that's typically collected in a year. So total projected revenue is 131.6 million versus 126 million on the expenditure side, is a $5.5 million surplus. Again, that's still a conservative number. That it could be more than that by the end of the year once our payroll ends. It gives us a better indicator of where the year is going to close out. All right, looking at the final proposed budget, you can see the number on the bottom in this proposed budget category is still a negative $1 million.
Mr. Sawyer, sorry. Before we go to the next item, should we just make sure
sure.
there are questions on first?
Sure.
This is a lot of numbers.
Sorry.
Are there any more questions on the statements? Yes, Mr. Reynolds.
In terms of local revenue, where are we with collections on local revenue in terms of percentage of all? 90th percentile.
So most of our collections are real estate taxes, so we're well above the 90%. So we're this projected number. I mean, it might move a little bit from that, but that's close to the end. We talked about where, on the state side, we only collected 16 million to date, but we're looking at collecting 26 million, which we will collect at the end of our accounting period, but that could be the fall until we get it all collected. So yeah, this is mostly collected.
It is mostly collected.
So we have a budget of 99.7 and we're 104. That we far exceed budget.
But we can't account for anything that we haven't collected yet from the state towards our expenses. Right, that goes into our expense part, goes into our revenues, I'm sorry, for 23, 24.
So the state waits until June to pay a lot of their revenues. Like we get one of our biggest payments from the state on June 1st. So that'll make up a lot of that $10 million difference. And before the next school year, we should have collected the vast majority of this 26 million, pending some sort of state pass.
Mr. Evans.
I was going to take this to the legislative committee to explore a little bit as well. But what I recall, you said that before in terms of the timing of the payments, most of them would come to the end. But is there some context in why that happens? Is that like their budget cycle, or is
It's
that
all part of the
some other?
budget negotiation cycle. The most notorious one was transportation was always level funded, but the subsidies would go up for the school districts, which meant that the school year would end on June 30th, but you wouldn't collect your final transportation payment well into late fall. So it's all part of that. It's all part of the budget negotiation process.
We have to adopt 500 by July. I'm June, and they do by July.
I think what's really driving it to, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to-
No, that's fine.
I think what's driving it too is ESSER. The federal government slow to pay, the state slow to pay as well for some of the money that's tied to ESSER.
Got it.
I don't have the evidence.
So
I would think that each government, we're in a higher, in terms of the past 20 years, we're in a higher than normal interest rate period. It's as high as it's been for, I think each government is taking their turn, holding on to it. There's no evidence to support that, but
That's not on the record. And what I'm hearing is like, it's not a state level, it's not a discretion upon the state. It's really because of when they decide on their budget, there's timing of when payments get made, and the school district kind of just fits in somewhere in there, or like.
I couldn't tell you why there's such lag.
Okay, it's just so
like the basic education subsidy, they award that at the beginning of the year with the budget, and they make the biggest payment at the end of the year. Probably because some school districts have, such a charter school draw on a basic ed subsidy that you don't get that enrollment figured out, that charter school deduction figured out until later in the year. That could be why. Some districts lose their entire basic ed subsidy to charter schools, so.
Yeah, I'm gonna take it to the legislative committee as well, see it. Anything could be. Thank you.
Any other board questions? Any questions from the public?
Is it on this slide or the previous slide?
On what we presented so far in this meeting?
And did we go through the slide already?
Yes, I'm sorry, I agree with for all the, we talk about this every month, so I didn't want to go over everyone here.
Okay, I'm just trying to make sure. I thought I saw something different, but no, that's okay. Thank
Sounds
you.
good. Thank you. All right.
All right, so re-looking at the proposed final budget. If we recall from last month, there was a different revenue number, there was a different expenditure number, but the net result was a projected loss of $1 million. So the difference is all right here in federal sources. What I didn't budget for last year was I didn't have the ESSER number figured out. ESSER is revenue that comes in, it's spent on ESSER expenditures, it comes right out. So it's a wash. So the net is zero on our ESSER spending. We have wisely, even before I got here, not made ESSER a part of our budget where it fills a gap. So we're not going to have any sort of fiscal cliff when ESSER goes away. So we're addressing those needs due to COVID, but we're not becoming dependent on one. So that's the big difference. It's this line item right here. But at the end of the day, it's still the same. It's still the same $1 million deficit. What the proposal would be funded by the 1.1% tax increase we'll get to later. Last month, we reviewed this chart of our fastest growing expenditures. Obviously, pension being the largest driver of expenditures in the school district world for the past 2 decades, and charter schools expenses slowly creeping up and becoming a larger and larger part of a school district's budget. Costs that we have more control over: healthcare and debt service, by these 2 line items. I thought it would be useful to look at total spending by these different mandates. So charter school costs, pension costs, special education costs driven by special education law. What percentage is funded by the state in blue? What percent is funded by the federal government, and what percent is funded by local real estate tax dollars? So if we go back 10 years to 2012, of this total allotment of expenditures, our piece was $12 million. Now our piece is $27 million. And we talk about what was one of the largest drivers of tax increases in all school districts in the past 10 years was the pension cost. And that's a cost that was directly driven by state policy and handed down to the districts to pay for. All right, so moving back to that $1.2 million deficit. To complete this deficit, bring holistically a balanced budget, we would need a 1.1% tax increase, which means our millage required will be 52.4 for next year. Looking at that compared to our Act 1 index, which is a general measure of the rise in expenditures in our school district, that is well below that threshold. We looked at this last week. We looked at the historical Act 1 index over the past 15 years versus a tax increase within the district. And you can see since 2011, 2012, the district has been very responsible in how it raises taxes each year. The homestead exclusion, if you recall, is the gambling act that was put in by the state, where proceeds from gambling within Pennsylvania would go towards funding reductions in school property taxes. The amount of money that the school district got hadn't changed since its inception until last year. That allotment was increased to $4 million. And everyone was concerned that the state would reduce its allotment back to $3.5 million, but they kept it at the $4 million level. So that's good news that that number isn't changing. We looked at this last month as well. This was just an illustrative guide as to what a real estate tax bill change would look like at various assessments. So if your home assessment is 142,000, a 1.1% increase is about $81 a year. If your median home assessment is $225,000, then your total real estate tax increase is $128 a year. And that's assessment, that's not fair market value. So assessment is well below fair market value in Shelton. And also a repeat of last week when we looked at pension costs and we looked at the school district's taxing history over the past 10 years. Pension costs pretty much drove 15% increase in most school districts across the state. So on top of that, Cheltenham is middle of the pack and holding an average that is, my eyes lining up right, that is well below most of our neighbors, or in line with most of our neighbors. And we're not within the past 15 years, one of the highest, seeing some of the highest increases in taxes. All right, so that is my final tax slide.
Thank you. Any board questions?
I just
Yes, Ms.
want to
Lovett.
make one comment. Talking to other school board members at the Montgomery County Inter-Unit board meetings, we are definitely on the low side of the tax increases. Almost every school board member I talk to is going up to the Act 1 index. And a lot of it is driven by their charter school costs. So we are definitely on the lower end of things this coming school year.
It's nice to see just the 1.1%.
Yeah.
At the last business manager meeting, there was a roundtable discussion about most districts are, I was hearing 2, 3, 4%. And I think we can easily come in below that.
Thank you for that context. Any other questions? I had a couple small ones. One is just a clarifying question on the median home assessment slide.
Yes.
Do you know what the the repeat of the word median threw me for a loop because it's really just a home assessment, right? That's my question is, do you have a sense of what the median?
I'm sorry,
assessment
I hit copy paste. This is the median assessment.
Okay.
And then this
And
is,
then those are just other examples.
so how about this?
So the top one is the median. Thank you. That might be worth correcting when publishing, but that was actually my question. Thank you. Other question is, thank you for going on this slide because this was
So that's how this works. So
okay.
here's the amount that's of the homestead money, and with that homestead money, they give you a median assessment.
Got it.
And that's what the 142,865.
Great. So we didn't have to figure it out. That's great. I noticed the approved farmstead properties has gone down a little bit, a couple, 400 roughly, in the past 10 years. Is that because people don't know there's 100 people out there that could have applied but didn't?
More than likely.
Okay. Do you have a sense of what that would? I mean, it's 400. It would be roughly 10%. Like that's not nothing, right? If it's 400, that's 10% of 8,000.
Yeah,
It would be 10% of 4 million.
This pot divided up amongst more.
Okay, so the pot gets divided up across more people. It's not that the number on the left goes up.
So the more obviously this is less money, but
Understood. Okay, I wasn't sure if it was the other way around.
so we're required by law to send the amount
Understood.
by every taxpayer that homestead exists and to resend the applications to do that.
So it's not that we're missing out on $400,000 potential revenue.
This is probably people moving in and out.
Understood. Thank you very much.
That don't reapply or don't understand.
Well, before I go to the public, I will just reiterate what we said or what I said, I guess, last month, which is I really appreciate this budget. I think it was very thoughtfully constructed. I also, with that context of we are, for those who don't know, Act One is kind of a reflection of the pace of increases of expenses across the state. So a 4% Act One index indicates the expectation that salaries and cost of goods are going up at that rate. So the fact that we are so far below Act One, even though it is a tax increase, is a reflection of our administration's roots and real hard work to keep costs under control. So thank you for that. And with that, I will go to the public. Are there any questions from the public? Yes.
I have a question, sort of more.
If you could say your name and.
Sure.
Thank you.
I'm Hannah Bennett. I'm from Cheltenham. With regard to the rapid upward motion of the pension percentage, and I know that is every district and other government entities, is there some, is that gonna stop? I mean, at some point, that rapid upward incline.
So next year, our contribution is 35 cents of every dollar in salary we pay into the pension. And it caps at 40%. That's the level now.
Okay, because I mean, just for every district and every government entity, there's only so much money that you can, the pensions are.
Correct. So we've already climbed the hill. And
Okay.
we're at the top, but that's all dependent on when PCERS pushes out their annual financial report. They release what's called the funded percentage, which is the actuarial value of the money in the fund, the money coming into the fund, and its ability to pay for all the benefits, pension benefits going forward. And that number has to increase. So it was at 100% back in the year 2000, and it dipped down to 56%. I think we're in the 60s now. So that number has to continue to project upward, and it is at this point.
Any other questions from the public?
Can I ask a question about Elizabeth Karras Cheltenham? The homestead, is that thing that comes in the mail? We're supposed to fill that out?
If you filled it out once and you haven't moved, then that's all you're required to do. They put your name on the homestead list. If you move into a township, and you haven't.
Because my neighbors asked me and I said, fill it out. I did, I didn't know what it was. I thought it was, I filled mine out, but I'm like, you're not gonna get any.
If they've already filled it out, then you don't
Okay.
have to fill it again. You can always
Okay,
call the
okay, so
county.
it just one.
Is there a way to find out if you filled it out?
Yes, you can call the county, can verify.
Yeah, I told is there any way, you know how you go and you post things about taxes not going up? Is there any way, once in a while, EPH, maybe you could put it on there? Because people do read that when you put it on there, people see it.
Sure.
Do you know what I mean? Like, it needs to go to social media. Put it on parent, whatever, put it on whatever. We don't know any of this. I mean, I know when you posted about taxes not being raised and all that, and I saw the comments, and people were, for once, they were happy. But it makes people happy now.
I didn't post on behalf of the board.
No, you said it, but you
Yes,
like,
I know,
if you
that's
don't
not-
mind it, like once in a while, if you guys are.
So, I mean, this is a challenging district when it comes to real estate taxes. I mean, it's one of the oldest townships in Montgomery County. So the assessments are naturally going to be lower because when you build a new home, it starts at the top assessment. And a home that's been around for a while needs to be reassessed to climb in value. And we also don't have a large business complex, business district. This township is largely homeowner dependent to pay for its school district. So there's certainly things that make Cheltenham more difficult than other districts.
Just the trees.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, so I included all of the legislative items that we approved next week as it relates to the real estate taxes and just some housekeeping on it. I won't read through them all. So we talked about the adoption of the budgets. What we adopt is the total expenditures as listed on our page in the budget. We have a separate motion for the tax levy. So we have a real estate transfer tax we're approving that isn't changing. A mercantile tax isn't changing. Net profits tax isn't changing. A local service tax isn't changing. And here a school tax is changing 1.1%. We approved the farmstead amount. So we saw the 4.08 million to be approved, which is a assessment exclusion of $10,000, which is about $520 a parcel, based on 7,000 parcels in the township. We approved the installments, the installment plan option for taxpayers. We approved the discount period, which is through September 5th, where you can pay your tax and get 2% discount. We approved the penalty period, which is November 3rd. And that's all of the real estate tax approval items. Other housekeeping items, we approve all of the district's depositories. These are all the banks in which we invest or have funds in. Also, the authority for us to change during the year and to pursue the best interest rate. We're currently enrolled in the PISLAF CFO program, which is a very good program in terms of putting all the school district's money into a fund that's fully collateralized, so it's little to no risk, and it takes your funds, it matches your cash flow, and tries to put your money into investments that time out when you need that money. So typically by August, we'll have the lowest amount of money we'll have in the year, and a lot of our investments will expire and be reinvested at the highest rate. So we're part of that very good program. And I mean, we continue to look at interest rates at all times, but that's a pretty solid investment. We also approve our ability to participate in cooperative purchasing arrangements. These are pre-bid lists that are performed by other governments. So PEPM is done by the Central Susquehanna Intermediary Unit, so it's done by another district on behalf of the state. The PA Department of General Services does their own bid list. A lot of things we buy are piggybacked off of this pre-bid list. And otherwise, we'd have to advertise for 3 weeks for a lot of our purchases, which is a very slow way to do business. We're approving myself, Lou, and our purchasing director as purchasing agents, another housekeeping item. We're approving our insurance carriers for next year. This number is still a budget. So this number came in about $60,000 higher than last year, which put it on my radar to shop. So we're still walking the buildings with other insurance carriers trying to get a better price. So this could change and this could change. I think by next week I'll know what the number's going to be, hopefully less. Approval of the contract for the architectural services. So KCBA has a contract to perform architectural design, civil engineering services at the high school. That contract will be attached when it's finalized. I don't have any major comments about it, just some nitpicky things here and there that we have to work our way through, but that should be done by next week. And the last item for approval is approval of lunch and breakfast prices and a renewal of Whitson's for next year. So we're still keeping an eye on this breakfast approval. We think that the governor is going to provide free breakfast again next year. So I don't know that we'll have an answer for that. So that may require more research and more consideration until then. But until now, this rate for lunch, this rate for breakfast is the same as it's been for many years. Given our reserves, our food service fund, there's no reason to increase it this year, and there's no requirement because our contribution towards food service is the same as our other governments. And similar to last year, Whitson's has a guaranteed return of $35,000. So it's a very similar contract for a new year. Any questions on the board action items?
Any more questions? Mr. Evans?
Point of clarity, for the 22-23 universal breakfast, the district provided that and was not reimbursed all of those funds?
So the governor's budget allotted free breakfast.
Last year? Oh, okay, all right.
So we approved the motion and just I think it's looking like the same thing is going to happen. But I don't know that we'll get the budget before June 13th. We have to approve this price, so we'll have to do this for sure. But I wanted it up here because we had to talk about it.
Yeah, no, I in my head, that did not happen last year. I know, I'm aware of the proposal this year, but in my head, we made a decision to continue universal breakfast despite the lack of funding. So I remember what you're talking about. So I'm not wrong. There was some conversation along that, but then
No,
the
you're right,
governor, I
that
guess,
happened.
the state, that did happen,
And
but then the state came
made
through.
it.
Okay, gotcha.
Mr. Riddell,
Just a question about the food service renewal contract. Are we time bound there? I haven't had a chance to review them. I'm kind of speaking for myself, like if there's any feedback or any edits to that, do we have the opportunity to do that, or is it?
I can post the renewal contract. That's the board is.
Yeah, that was,
I could do that to the draft architecture contract as it is.
yeah, thank you.
any other board questions? Two small questions. First off, just a clarifying question around the tax increase. In the budget presentation, it was 1.11, but we are looking at 1.1, correct, as the actual passage?
Yeah, but
Or we're just rounding?
I'm gonna round it.
That's fine. I didn't know it mattered, but I wanted to.
It doesn't.
They were both on
matter.
slide. Sounds good. What, and I don't expect you to know off the top of your head, but even roughly, we could theoretically budget for free breakfast, right? We don't have to rely on the state if we wanted to actually allocate funds to it.
Absolutely.
Do you have a sense of what that scope would look like based on the usage we've had so far?
What do you mean? It's good.
Like,
You mean the cost?
yes, thank you, yeah.
So
Sorry,
Lou crunched numbers for me today. It was about $67,000
Okay.
in cost.
So I just wanted to raise that because if the impact, we're talking about making sure, it just occurred to me that it might be something, I don't know if it's too late to throw a wrench in it, but
No, the whole reason this is here is because we have to make a decision, and it's to discuss it here rather than
Right.
next week.
and so in theory, we could, it's okay that I'm bringing it
I
up.
mean, you guys aren't voting on it tonight.
Understood. So I wanted to raise that as a possibility because it sounds like we could go into next year and then maybe we should make it 1.11. We could go into next year planning to pay for it and then being pleasantly surprised that it's being covered, but either way, our students can
So keep
rely
in mind, you're talking about two different funds. You're talking about the general fund and the food service fund, which are two different accounts and they're separate.
Understood.
So the food service fund, by law, is not supposed to go in the red. It's not supposed to lose money. If it does, then the general fund has to start funding. We're not anywhere near that. I did, in case this question, I brought people. So at the end of last year, we had $700,000 in our fund. So there's ample money there.
Ms. Haywood.
Schreiber, that takes in consideration the cost of free breakfast. I mean, the $1.40 at the elementary, middle, and high school, we have it there, so it's already built in as a cost that we can incur.
I assume those are the prices we would charge students, correct?
Correct.
Oh,
Yeah, so I'm asking if we made it free, it sounds like the cost would be roughly a little under 70,000 that would be paid for through that fund balance potentially.
Correct.
Mr. Rose?
It sounds like we want and will do it, and it's a matter of accounting where we want to wait for the state to provide the funds rather than triggering this. Is that essentially because I kind of was going there as well, but it sounds like we're planning to do universal breakfast. It's just a matter of.
Based on your recommendation.
Right.
Oh, okay.
So-
it is. Okay.
So just to clarify, what's being presented right here would not be planning to do free universal breakfast. It would be planning to charge $1.40. And then if the state funds it, we would make an adjustment. But we could, in theory, plan to do free either way. And then
To get the conversation started, I have to make some sort of recommendation.
Absolutely.
And then the board has to decide if
Yes.
that's what they want to do. So this is a conversation slide here.
So we didn't recommend free, we recommended 140.
Right, that's right.
But by all means, you can recommend free.
Right. I'm throwing that out there as long as it's not against, it's technically against administrative recommendation from a technicality, but as long as it's not rubbing
This is a finance committee, not a board meeting, so you can.
That's
not-
fine.
Not really the wrong way.
Mr. Brunel Williams.
As one board member, I would support that if that was something that that the school district could build into the budget for next year. It sounds like it's a very reasonable cost. It's something that I know after years on the board, we've discussed kind of in and out and up and down, talked about usage and et cetera. And I think the greater point is from an equity perspective, usage or not, right? They're providing the opportunity specifically, not just because it's feasible, because it's the right thing to do, is something that I as one board member will support.
That's all on that.
Should we do a straw poll? No, then,
I don't think you can.
well, we're allowed, it is a public meeting.
Oh, it is public,
so,
yeah. By all means.
Yeah, I mean,
Yes.
so it's just a straw poll, I'm seeing head nods, but our folks in here roughly, and that's.
Looks unanimous.
Yes. Yes. All right, thank you for, and who's gonna say what?
Do we do any exit kind of interviews with Woodson? Because I know there were some issues this year, so wanted to get a sense of where we were with Woodson in terms of an exit, well, like not an exit, just like survey.
They were to have conducted a survey at the end of April. Did you see it? I didn't see it.
To students, to families,
Students.
or to students, I think I saw that somewhere, but.
I see Mr. DeAndreas
The
adamantly.
survey.
Yeah.
It was open that last week.
Okay,
That's what I thought.
what was the outcome of the survey? Do you have it?
Two, we just shared the link. We'll, generate that.
Okay.
If you can pose that, to Madam Chair as a board request,
Sure.
we can do it as a board.
If it's- that's the role of the board, then.
It'll be good to.
Madam Chair, you heard that?
I heard it. That's that's fine. We can post the link. We're all in agreement.
Brunel Williams?
And just one last comment, that was essentially what my question regarding being time bound for the renewal of the food service contract, like where, do we have the ability to have evaluated, and are we pleased, and are we okay as a administration? And I would think yes, based on the recommendation of the renewal, that we're satisfied, but I just know personally I haven't.
We're satisfied, but, we're always striving for continuous improvement. And we're gonna be reaching out to make students and faculty and staff, have a more active role around taste testing, et cetera. The issue's consistency and quality.
Correct.
And that's a little bit of a concern right now.
Operationally, I was satisfied. There were a couple of hiccups along the way. Food quality is one of them. With some staffing changes, but it'd be interesting to see what the service says for sure.
Thank you.
And just clarifying, we're able to renew food services without going out to bid 5 years, and this would be our first renewal.
Correct. Our RFP.
All right, thank you very much. Does the public have any questions or comments? Yes.
Hi, Hannah Bennett, Cheltenham. So I can guarantee you my high schooler didn't fill out any survey that wasn't absolutely required of them, but I will say both of my kids dislike the new food. Neither of them liked it, 4th grade and 9th grade, so Cheltenham Elementary and the high school. Compared to the previous vendor, I don't have details as to exactly what they do or don't like, and they're both picky, so, but comparatively, they preferred the old vendor.
Fried chicken.
Yes.
Friday wings.
Like, for example, the pizza's not good compared to the old pizza.
Is there a difference
But I don't know.
In the two peanut, or is it just
So
the
when
kid?
we get that
I wasn't
feedback,
here.
we'll be able
I wasn't here with
to
Charles.
quantify it on a larger scale.
Okay.
Thank you for that comment. Any other?
Yes, Karen Maxwell, I have a question about the breakfast. So if you were to provide free breakfast, is that number based off of student participation from last year, or is this projected for every student in the district? Because I know for one, my son's bus doesn't make it in time to school for free breakfast, and I'm assuming most kids don't. So unless you drop your child off to school ahead of time, they're not gonna get to school in time for free breakfast. one, my son eats too much, he wouldn't be satisfied with it, anyway, so it's a waste, but I'm just wondering how many kids actually make the school for free breakfast? They're using the buses are not getting them there in time for breakfast. So is that taken into consideration? And then, that's just my question, like how many kids are actually using this, eating this?
So the board wants to recommend that we provide a report around food and nutrition that includes some of that data. And we can do that, but I can answer that on the top.
And I'll
I
add
see,
comments.
okay.
Okay, sorry.
Okay, let me just respond.
Yeah.
No problem, yeah.
So we do have a satellite breakfast station by the area where the buses arrive, so students can just pick up bags.
Okay.
And go to the entrances and just take it with the class. So they don't have to go to the cafeteria. We can have bus arrival and get challenged.
Okay. Thank you. I just wanted to add, I know my son doesn't like the lunch. He'll eat anything. 'cause he's always hungry,
Clearly, it's.
but he's already expressed his face. He'll still eat because he's hungry, but preferably he liked, whoever was the vendor 2 years ago,
Yes.
he enjoyed that food as opposed to who it is now. I think it's 2 or 3 years ago.
I think it was the same vendor from.
I don't know, I just know,
We had one vendor for quite some time and we recently changed that.
okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, we-
Sorry for answering questions that you all can answer.
Were we looking at SLP? No,
No.
All right, well, thank you.
that's the difference.
Any other questions? Seeing none, can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Evans, Mr. Williams, all in favor?
Aye.
Meeting's adjourned. Thank you.